This is the evaluation for our media thriller opening. In what ways does your media product use, develop and challenge forms and conventions of real media products?
The way that we used and developed conventions of real media product first was the music we used, because it was scary, it built suspense, it ran all the way through the production and it fitted in time with the picture on the screen.
Another way we followed conventions of a real media product was the elements of mystery and suspense created from the unknown antagonist. Throughout the opening, it was unclear to the audience who the antagonist actually was, and this remained unclear, which made the audience want to keep watching and find out.
We used angles from another perspective. A lot of the time we used it from behind the character so that you automatically got the idea that someone's watching her, and this is where we inputted the stalker vibe, which was the main storyline.
From the fast-paced cutting, the music and the build-up of tension, this means that suspense had built up all the way through the opening until it finally reaches the climax of the screaming, which conveys the fear the protagonist has.
Another way is that we use both males and females. Even though we didn't use a male actor, we showed that he was present and that he could possibly be the antagonist. Also, the types that we used, we made, the first one was on Photoshop, and all of the ones in between with the actors on, we made ourselves using water and a scanner.
As you can see from the top picture on the left, one thing we did to challenge the forms and conventions of real media products was the use of the bright lighting. Usually in thrillers you'd expect to see sort of a dull, dim lit room or space, but we decided to challenge this by using the bright lighting, which made the quality of the filming a lot better.
How does your media product represent particular social groups?
Representation of a typical teenage girl in a relationship is used throughout. This drinking is involved, which is a stereotype associated with teenagers, which we want to communicate throughout, which the audience can then relate to as it is targeted at teenagers.
We also wanted to use modern technology because that's something that's always current in teenagers and young adults' life, and every young person is usually up to date with the technology. Along with the costume that they're wearing, we wanted that to be suitable for their age group so that people wouldn't look at it and they'd just recognise it rather than not being able to interact.
A lot of the props and concepts used, such as the phone and the texting, are very relevant to society today, and so social interaction is used to communicate the sort of teenage lifestyle.
Straight away as well, you get the impression that the murderer is even the boyfriend of the girl and knocked at the door, and because it seems like if it is the boyfriend or the friend, then it doesn't seem like there would be something really significant for the person to harm the main character, which may link to the stereotype of reckless teenagers being associated with crime. These are some of the pictures that we portrayed in the last slide, with the costume that she used, the technology and the drinking being involved.
In terms of feminism, upon watching the thriller opening, feminists would be encouraged by the fact the girl is standing up for herself. They want to promote things like independence and sort of a strong female character.
However, as the opening goes on, she is represented as vulnerable and turns to alcohol, which would make her be seen as less and inferior and not being able to cope with everyday situations.
They may be slightly pleased to see that the male is portrayed in a more negative light, but this is questionable because actually what they're striving for is equality between genders. They don't want this sort of inequality between male and females, which is what is achieved by the male being viewed in such a negative light. He's sort of inferior.
Overall, in our production, we balanced out between male and female, and I think equally we made both look as bad or as good as the other. What kind of media institution might distribute your product and why?
From our research gathered, looking into different institutions that might distribute our product, we decided that the film institution that would be most suitable would be Screen Gems.
Screen Gems distributes a lot of films aimed at young people, and a lot of them are of the thriller or horror genre, and they're all quite successful. We chose this because it was closely related to our production, and a lot of the films they distributed were similar to the one we were distributing.
These are some examples of the films that Screen Gems have distributed, such as Roommate, Prom Night and Easy A.
All of them are involving young adults, or the main character is the focus on a teenage girl, which again relates to our production.
Who would be the audience for your media product?
The audience for our media product would probably be teenagers and young adults around the age of 15 to 35. This helped us decide that we would rate our film as a whole as a 15.
We decided that we would try and eliminate class discrimination in our filming. This means that the film is going to appeal to a wider audience. Even though it's still restricted by age due to the fact we were targeting teenagers, it's obvious that characters aren't one extreme of the end of the social class or another, so it appeals to a wider audience.
We didn't try and influence our production full class because we didn't use particularly scruffy clothes, and we didn't use particularly like really posh or upper class clothing, so that the girl was more mediocre and she could relate to a lot of people.
How did you attract or address your audience?
We attracted our audience through the use of aesthetically pleasing actors to play the roles, along with appropriate props and costumes such as casual clothing, the phones, and the way the bedroom was decorated to be more elegant. It was a lot of pink and just typical of a teenage girl with the surroundings.
The people we carried out research on were part of the target audience we were trying to aim at. We achieved their needs and wants by the following things.
Okay, we decided to use attractive characters because when we took out our questionnaire, most of the participants said that attractive characters would be really important, so we made sure that we used them in our production.
Also from the questionnaire, we found out that the audience would prefer us to use stereotypical conventions. We stuck to this for the most part, with the terms of the storyline, the suspense, the mystery, but we did deviate from these conventions slightly by using the bright lighting already discussed earlier in the PowerPoint.
From the questionnaire we collected, results said that the most preferred subgenre was murder, so we decided this would be sensible to use in our production, and we did so, as is obvious in our production.
However, we didn't want to include this too obviously, as it would have sort of transferred the opening into sort of horror genre, so we did it more subtly towards the end.
The audience said that they would prefer a human antagonist that was an unknown person rather than a paranormal force or something inhuman. We used this by showing the footsteps, so it was clear that it was a human, although we still did not make clear who this human was going to be.
And both sexes were considered in our opening, through the girl who's in it pretty much throughout, but we also added in the aspect of the male character through the phone calls, and also the antagonist in the end could either be male or female.
Also, they said that they would prefer the filming to be in third person and look professional. So by this, we used pretty much all of our angles were from behind or from the side of the actor, and we used a high definition camera so that it did look professional. What have you learned about technologies from the process of constructing this product?
We learnt mostly that editing and filming and generally the whole production is not as simple as we thought it would be.
We also learnt that we need to be very precise with timings, and this did prove difficult. However, we did get over this, and in the end our production was very precise with both how the film was rolling and the music side of it.
Because we created our soundtrack in GarageBand, we found it particularly hard to sync the music to the video due to the different pace in the music, different sound effects at the right times, and also it not being in the same program proved quite difficult. but it's something that we overcome in the end.
We also learned and developed editing skills because neither of us really had much experience with editing, and now that we do have it, we can continue this, and in any of the projects we have, we'll be able to use the programs more effectively.
And we also learned how to use the particular editing software like Final Cut Pro and GarageBand to a sufficient standard. It really improved on our skills that we had towards the start when we were struggling with where things were, how to do simple things like cut it, and in the end I think we got to grips with this after practice and was able to use it to the best of our ability. Looking back at your preliminary task, what do you feel you have learned in the progression from it to the final product?
We learned that the quality of the camera and the film in general is essential. It makes a big difference whether or not it's a high quality film or a low quality, and it makes the lighting and how the characters appear look a lot better.
We also learned that you can't rely on other people's schedules to fit around filming. When we first originally tried to film the draft of our thriller opening, we ended up asking about 8 people, and of which we only ended up with 2 characters, which we kind of had to work with. But when planning for our thriller, we decided just to use one main character, which meant that they were guaranteed to turn up, and we wouldn't have to change and adapt the storyline on the day.
We also learned that the storyline does not need to be overcomplicated, as long as we can show our skills through the cutting, the editing and the high quality skills, along with being able to keep still and making it flow accurately. Then there is no need to overcomplicate the story and make the narrative harder to understand, when it can be simple and shown really good quality through other ways.
We underestimated how long the process would be. Originally we made a sort of plan of what we'd do week by week, but as we started to get into this, we realised things were taking longer, which means we had to adapt our schedules to suit. So editing, for example, we thought would take a lot shorter time than it did. Because of the amount of footage we got, selecting this firstly took time, and putting it into the program, things like just rendering, editing, cutting it, was already taking up a lot of our time before we even got to adding any effect or anything on it, or adding in titles and music.
Adding on to this, we learned that rushing was definitely not an option that we could take, because to get the best grade we could, we need to keep the quality high, we need to make it as best as we could do. As well as this, from this we learned that the lighting and the mise en scène is the most important thing, because if there's something in the background or you can't see clearly what's going on, the narrative is then not clear and it's hard for the audience to understand what they're watching or relate to it.
Should we come to do a task like this again, we've learnt a lot of things. Our skills have been enhanced, and also our time management has been improved as well, I think. The soundtrack.
Creating our own soundtrack meant that we were able to sync our film to the sound efficiently in order for the music to enhance the suspense and mystery.
We weren't relying on something that had already been created for something else. We could adapt this and change it to the specific climaxes in our opening, which helped a lot to convey mood and sort of suspense and mystery and highlights of the opening.
In this print screen you can see that we chose different clips that fitted in at the same time as the film, and we did effects such as fading in and out. We changed the volume to fit the scenes and to make sure that it was effective.
In terms of an overview of our opening, we worked to feedback from the questionnaire, and the questionnaire was mainly people of our target audience, so what they said was something we needed to work with, and it could be trusted to be true to their needs and wants. This meant our film is almost certain to succeed with our target audience, as it included everything they want to see, and so there wouldn't be a reason why they would not want to watch it.
Also, we knew that time and commitment were essential to produce a really good production, because we were new to technologies and we needed to take time out of this to learn how to use them effectively, along with making our production fluent and producing it as high quality as we possibly could.